Well, welcome everyone to Anxiety Simplified, now going beyond psychology. And this is a very special show for us. And it is my or our 100th podcast. So it's 2 years now of doing podcasts. I cannot believe it. So I really wanted to do this kind of like a congratulations to me and us all that put this together, because I don't know that people really realize all the people that it does kind of take to put this together. It really is a team effort, because Sarah and I do write these, we do create our own content, and always want to find interesting things to present to you or find really good guests, which we will continue to do. But then, it has to be edited. And so there's editors we have, and then putting it up and making sure that there's pretty pictures that it comes out on. So I don't know that you guys realize all the things that go into this, but they do. So I want to thank everyone that has really helped with bringing this podcast together. And then today, Sarah's going to interview me about what's happened in the last 2 years with these 100 podcasts. So, Sarah, take it away.
Yeah, I just want to start with a congratulations.
Oh.
100 podcasts is a big accomplishment. I mean, that is a lot of time and heart that you have put into the information that you are giving to the world. I mean, this is really a way of giving what you were doing and your knowledge. And so, one, I want to thank you for everything that you have put out there, because I think it's your heart that you have put into this and what you were sharing. So I want to interview you today about, well, one, the progression of how Beyond Psychology came to be, because it really started with Anxiety Simplified, and the progression and the growth of where it has come. So I want to kind of start there. I guess move into there. Really, it's about, how did you start this? How did you get into mental health to have the background to be able to give this information?
Yeah, I know. And I'm going to just say this off the top, everybody. This is hard to be interviewed about me. I'll just say it, because it's easy to talk about somebody else, but it is because of my story, I feel like, is the reason why I went into mental health, because I felt I started really from a neglectful background, and there was alcoholism, and kind of continued with kind of abusive kinds of things happening. And I had to figure out stuff. I had to figure out, I wanted health and I wanted health for Sarah and Daniel, my children, so I had to figure this out. And so I did. I feel like, I found a counselor, I got help, I went back and I got my master's degree, and really to be able to speak as a professional and about anxiety, because that's what I feel like I certainly had, and panic, and post-traumatic stress disorder, which has anxiety, depression as components of it. And so I needed to learn about me, and so that I could do this and not be putting it on anybody else as clients. But I really had feel like what I really figured out was ways to kind of melt down or put into perspective some really simple ways to handle anxiety. And that's where I decided I would start with doing this. It was a podcast first, with Anxiety Simplified, to share these skills that I had honed over 30 years as a mental health professional.
Yeah. So you started with Anxiety Simplified, and there were, I think, 85 podcasts specifically for Anxiety Simplified before we moved into this. But, for anybody who's wanting to know a little bit more, what were the topics that you brought into Anxiety Simplified, and what was your thought process about selecting things or bringing things to people?
Mm. This did start as the pandemic started. And I could see, as a counselor, the overwhelm and the anxiety and really the mental health crisis that was starting with the pandemic. It was just throwing people over the edge. If they were close to the edge, they were being thrown over. And so I wanted to give back some of those, I call them skills, really, that I feel like I teach my clients to be able to handle anxiety or depression symptoms or PTSD symptoms, um, to be able to manage life. And in and one of the very first podcasts actually I did was because of, it was the teenagers, the 11 to 14-year-olds, that
Yeah.
the suicide rate was just skyrocketing. And I could just see, oh my gosh, we can't lose these young people. And they weren't in school and it was compounding. So that's where really it came from. I decided I can give free, these podcasts are free. And so I could give my knowledge in what I consider simplified ways to be able to handle anxiety. So that's really where it started. And then like you said, so maybe it was like 85. And then we decided, I actually, when I started Anxiety Simplified, I have always been a meditator and always kind of understood energy as the basis. If you listen at my first podcast, you'll hear that everything is energy. But I couldn't start there. I really felt like I had to have a progression with my listeners of starting, okay, I've got anxiety. What do I do? Instead of getting into the energetic side of the anxiety and what it does in your life and ways to deal with it. So, and then we had the opportunity come about um, of iHeartRadio. And at that point, I'm like, this is the time to make the shift. And I invited you, and you were like, yes, let's go beyond psychology now and into the energetics of what's going on. And it is a little bit more advanced, but I think I hope people can relate to it. And I hope people can tell us if this is relatable to them.
Yeah, we try to keep it those simple tools, which I love. You talked about being the basis of why you created it, giving people tools to cope in life in a very difficult time. When you talked about the teenagers, I remember how hard that article hit you because that's the age of my kids. And so your
Yes.
grandkids, that and how much it affected them, and watching just this progression of what was happening to the young people of our lives, and how do you provide tools, even if they aren't your audience, to the parents. How do you put a hand out to be like, hey, there's easy, simple ways to move through this. And I hope that we have carried that theme into the energy side for the Beyond Psychology, making it accessible and relatable,
And
because
usable.
yeah, and usable. That's right. Yeah. Let's
Because,
give some tools, because
yeah.
it's it's funny, we live in this energy world, this, like healthy thought process world, where a lot of people haven't been taught, or that hasn't been the world that they grew up in or have access to. So to have a podcast that you can put on and get some tangible tools of, how do I think about something differently? How do I breeze through this? How do I relate to something in a new way? That's really beautiful. So,
Mm, thank you. And I do feel like that's what we've done. And I'm proud of that, that we could really pull it off actually and do it, because it's not that easy in many ways. And you probably asked me a little bit about that, but yeah, because I do feel like I am, and I know you feel this a little bit too, like I'm putting myself out there. You
yeah,
don't know what's going to happen, what people are going to say or say about you or whatever. And so it is anxiety. It's not so much now, but it was anxiety producing. And what I would say to anyone about whether you want to start a project, or, what's holding you back. And what I found with this show was, and one of my sayings is, if your purpose is big enough, it just uh, transcends fear. The fear doesn't have a chance, or the anxiety doesn't have a chance if your purpose is big enough. And that's what I felt like with this show. I needed to do this for people. I just had to get this out there so that people, if they wanted it, could use it. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, we talked about how you got into Anxiety Simplified. We talked about how we moved into Beyond Psychology. So it has kind of progressed and grown into this new version. And, I want to ask what you've learned, this reflection piece. But before we go into that, if you were going to sum up Beyond Psychology, maybe this is the first time that our listeners are jumping on and really learning about us, how would you put that in a nutshell? If you were going to say Beyond Psychology, how would you say our purpose, what we talk about?
I feel like it's helping people to really look at things in a different way, or perspective, maybe an alternative way to look at some things, because psychology is science, right? That's what I feel like we're really going beyond science now, which is more of the mind. And a lot of what I feel like we are doing is going beyond the mind and more into the heart of what goes on in the energetics of the heart, and how that is, to me, just as important as the mind. And I think the perspective, a lot of times we only think of what the analytical, the success rate, the different kinds of things that we think of with, that analytical numbers part of your mind, but there's a whole half of your other brain that is about emotions. And I feel like that's really what we're doing, going into Beyond Psychology.
Yeah. And I love how you say that, where we're going into the heart. Like when you have a heartache, it's might be mental that you are thinking about the things, but you feel it. You feel the ache in your heart. And they're just so connected that you are seeing this connection between all the full body, the full person. And, because we do feel it in our hearts, even though it may be something we're thinking in our mind, because we are so truly connected. So, yeah. Okay. So let's move into, what is the best part of doing the podcast for you?
Well, I really do think it is sharing what I've learned 30 years as a mental health professional. I just feel it was just really important. It's almost like I'm getting up there in age, and it's like, I have to get this out. It's like, I better get this out now because I've learned a lot, in 30 years. And my clients tell me that every day, that I can make things simple for them to understand it. So I really felt that was important. And it's funny, this week, I was, as I was thinking, I don't get a lot of feedback a lot of times on the show, but I've just kind of realized I don't ask you, which might be a good point. But I happened to be talking about that with a client this week. And she goes, "Oh yeah, I listened to your show." I'm like, "Oh, you do?" And then I asked, "Oh, what did you like about it?" So, and she says, she really liked the show because I engaged the listener. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's good to know." And she called it emotionally hooked her in. And I thought, no, that's an interesting another way. And I think that's the heart piece that we're talking. We emotionally want to do that because that's what we want people to feel more or look at it differently. And she said, my voice is very soothing and calming. So I thought that was a nice compliment.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said, I even learned things. And I
Even
felt
better.
relaxed as I did. And she goes, "Oh," and then she goes, "And it's free." So I'm like, "Oh, that was a really sweet." I'm like, "Do you mind if I kind of use that? Because here I am going to be creating my 100th show." She goes, "Of course." So that was nice. To hear
Yeah.
back from people that this is actually helping them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it is important to remind the viewers that we are Beyond Psychology, that move from Anxiety Simplified podcast into Beyond Psychology, what we're talking on today here on iHeart Radio. Joey Williams, a 30-year mental health professional, and I am Joey's daughter, Sarah, and I am more of an energy healer, mystic. So this is the two parts we're bringing here together for anybody who's just jumping on at this point. So we are celebrating the 100th podcast and talking to Joey about what she has learned. And I guess the next part is, which you've maybe touched on a bit, but my next question is, what is the hardest part of doing this? And, what is the worst part of having a podcast?
Yeah, I think especially in the beginning, it was putting myself out there for
Yeah.
sure, and just not knowing reception or how people will receive it. And like I said earlier, it really, the purpose was bigger than any fear that I had. So that was definitely hard. I think the other thing is the time that is involved
Yeah.
and putting this together, that, it does add hours to my week after seeing clients. And I do evaluations for people that want a psychiatric service dog or emotional support animal. So I work, full time with that as well. And so I think at the added time, it is, and I don't, it, it is what it is, but I really enjoy doing it. But that can be, if there was a worst kind of thing, it is the time involved with it.
Yeah.
But there's really not a lot of drawbacks. I mean, it's pretty straightforward and easy using a computer now, and Zoom, and, a microphone and recording. And I got to say, now that we're doing with both of us and going beyond psychology, it is even more fun. Can you imagine, listeners, having your daughter on a radio show with you or on a podcast with you? And, also it's just, I think it's synergy too. I think the two of us coming together, it's a
Yeah.
different energy, and it's pretty fun. And I really hope that, some of these, I have a Roku or Amazon Fire Roku show on, and you can find the channel on Raven International. So there actually is a TV show as well that I've started since I've started working with Raven Glover Blair, and she has an agency, and she's just the best mentor. But we've done a lot, and she's the one that is Power Me Up Station is what this is, and she is the backbone of this station, and she is a woman powerhouse. And so we really appreciate all that she has offered us, with Power Me Up Station on iHeart as well as on Roku. And so, it's that there's so many more wonderful things that have come out than things that are negative, or not even negative, but
Hard. Those
harder.
things, challenges to overcome. And I
Yeah.
think you bring up a great point. We do have fun doing this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I hope people can hear it. I'm sure it comes across energetically, hearing it, but jumping on Roku to see us interact as well. I know people can see our connection, and we do have fun, and we love to banter about this in real life. So why not bring it here?
Record
Right?
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were going to kind of sum up the last 2 years, your 100 episodes, what do you think you have learned through this process?
I have learned, I feel like a lot of it, to be able to talk about something, I better study it. I better
Mm-hmm.
look at some articles. I better get some research behind, because I'm the science part of it, right? And I do feel like it's educated me more on
Yeah.
different like numbers of statistics of, unfortunately, suicide rates in teens. And in a lot of the shows too, I would take some kind of an article that I would read, and then I put my additional spin on it. But I really did have to study a lot. So I felt like I am probably maybe a more rounded person, because I have had to do kind of studying to be able to put these together. More or less what I've learned about, oh my goodness, technology. In the beginning, I couldn't even get a microphone to work, more or less upload these to, the platform that they sit on to go out. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to this. So I feel like a pretty technical whiz now
Yeah.
that you can throw a lot at me now. And it doesn't really, I don't do editing. I don't do editing. That's one thing I just like, that one I don't do. But I really had to learn a lot of different pieces to a lot of different things to be able to do this. Even just simple, I did quite a few courses, even just know a really simple thing of look into the little white light at the top of your computer. That's where the camera is instead of, you may be looking down.
Yeah.
It's like these
Yeah.
very simple things that I hope the audience, if you're viewing this as a video, you'd notice different things, or having the mic close or too far away, or good mics. So there's just a lot of different things that I feel like I have learned.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you have come a long ways for sure. And I know even just for me, when I jumped in with Beyond Psychology, those first couple shows are really hard. They're awkward. You don't know quite what you're doing, haven't figured out all the process, technology. So yeah, that's also a long ways to come. Well, and of course, I have to reflect on the energetic side of this, like what you had to overcome to feel comfortable moving forward, because we do have, I mean, most people have a fear of putting themselves out there, and what you had to walk through and heal and reflect and become comfortable with. Those are big things. So yeah, congratulations.
I would agree. Thank you. And it really is the basis of what I teach. So
Yeah.
if I'm not willing to do it, how could I expect my clients to? Because once you get on the other side of the fear, it's just like you're looking back at that little thing that you thought was a giant, and it's just this little dust ball that moves across the floor.
Yeah.
So it is just kind of doing it, I think, helps you to feel nobody's good at anything when they start.
Right.
So you got to go through not being good and hopefully getting better each time as you do it.
Yep. Yeah. So true. Okay. So what is new for you? I feel like we don't talk about the tools that you bring to the table enough, because not only do you provide free insights, tools, via podcast, but you have other things that you offer that we don't talk about on the show. Well, we're off on our own little topics here, but you have a number of things under your belt, but you also have new things. So tell me a little bit.
Yeah. That is such a good point. And, I'll even go back to one of the hardest things I find is to promote yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like that probably is the hardest thing. And so that's what you're talking about. Oh, I don't even talk about half of that at the time.
Right.
That, I have two websites. I have esapros.com, where you can find out about psychiatric service dogs or emotional support animal that I certify. I also have Anxiety Simplified.com or .net, either one. I own both. But there's a free thing about panic attacks right on. If you go there, you could get it for free. But what I've really honed and going to be new that I am creating is actually a free class on this a technique that I have developed called emotional tension release, or ETR. And I'm going to offer a free class, and then I'm going to be doing either week or bi-monthly classes that people can join to continue to practice this technique. And the way I like ETR, and I'll just go through the steps, but there's really 3 steps to it. But you really don't have to talk much. A lot of times at therapy, you have to go into what's going on in your life, or the drudges of whatever bad's happened. And you really don't with ETR. And that's why I think I could do it in a group. And basically the 3 steps are: you become aware of what's bothering you as an emotion, but feeling it in your body. So let's say it is anxiety about Oh, I had one this week. I should talk about this client. She was feeling helpless about her grandson who he was a teenager who's acting out dangerously. And so she was really close to him. She was like feeling really bad, didn't know what to do and how to help him. So she was feeling helpless. All right, let's just do this. I like to put my hand someplace on my body as I do this. So she was feeling it in her heart. So I said, let's just sit through it and be present with it and breathe through it. And that's it. But once you become aware of, like, she was feeling helpless, we do the 4 and 8 breathing, which I've gone through many times. And I'll actually have a podcast coming out, or a show coming out in a couple weeks on this, and I go through the whole thing. But it's basically, you be present, sit with this emotion, and hers was helplessness. So, and we do the 4 and 8 breathing, which is just breathe in through your nose, the count of 4, and out through your mouth to the count of 8 for 1 minute. So we just sat, she held the feeling in her body, we did the breathing, and there's always this little message. That's step 3. There's always this little message on the other side if you listen, and everybody misses this when you just sit with it and you're present. And I said, so listen for the message. And I said, she goes, did you, and I said, did you hear it? And she goes, yes. Almost immediately I heard, text him that you love him.
Oh,
Text him that you love him. And it kept repeating. And she goes, it was almost immediate. And I had to be like, text him that you love him. and she
oh.
and she just felt the helplessness just fade away. And this was in 1 minute. So this is something I am developing. I want to just do it in maybe a weekly class. The first one will be free, so you could know how to do it, so you don't have to think about it and all that. And then all you're going to do is sit with the feeling and breathe through it and wait for the message. So that's my ETR that I've developed, that has just been so amazing for clients.
So simple and so tangible, and just what a gift to be able to move through an emotion that you feel stuck with and you don't know what to do with, and to be reach out and know, for her grandson to know she loves him, and to be able, he knows they're there, or that is such a big concept that it sounds so simple, but when you're going through it and experiencing, it's a big deal.
It is, and something as simple as that, I think sometimes can't work.
Right,
So
right.
what I would say to everybody, these 3 steps will transform emotions to relieve emotional blocks within minutes. It can be done. So I love sharing these things with anyone ever. And so you can get a hold of me at anxietysimplified.net or ESA Pros. And we'll be back here to talk more about other exciting things. Actually, one of it is going to be how to be present.
Yeah.
And we'll do more of this. So thank you, Sarah, for helping me talk about myself a little bit in this show.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It's a big milestone, big celebration. So
Thank you.
congratulations. And thank you everyone for being here and being with us.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.